From everyone calling Francis dumb for leaving the UFC to the Predator signing the deal of a lifetime. Here's why Francis Ngannou blasted Dana White after signing with the PFL. Everyone was calling this man dumb for leaving the UFC. Dana was at the forefront of all of the hate this man received. You've all heard it by now, all that talk about Ngannou having fumbled the bag and ruined his career. The guy left the UFC after 3 years of contract negotiations, and Dana was continuously expressing his displeasure during press conferences. There were times when he called Ngannou difficult, times when he told the world that Francis's agents were morons, and even a time when he let fans know that the reason Francis hadn't fought was because he was afraid and didn't want to. Of course, that wasn't actually the case. After Ngannou finally successfully left, Dana did a press conference where he called the Predator out for being dumb. He announced to the fans that Francis had been offered a ridiculous deal, which he rejected. White minimized the actual story, saying Ngannou was just a money-grubbing idiot who wasn't happy, no matter what the UFC gave him. If that wasn't bad enough, other promotions decided to use this narrative set by Dana to get clout for themselves. The BKFC and ONE FC presidents both got in on the action. But before I get into all of that, why did Ngannou even leave in the first place? If it isn't obvious from the things I just mentioned, the guy wasn't treated well at the UFC. At a certain point, it looked like the promotion wasn't even promoting him anymore. Do you remember when he was barely getting any fights or any hype, despite being the heavyweight champion? It was ridiculous, to be honest, especially when you consider the way Dana was going off about the guy in the press. The Predator was getting his name dragged through the mud, all because he dared to make some demands for his new contract. Ngannou had some things he wanted, including money, and the UFC wasn't willing to give him any of those things other than the money. So, what did the man do? He left. Ever since then, he spent months as a free agent, and we were all hoping to see some sort of activity from him, but it just didn't happen. But apparently, the man was making moves behind the scenes. He's now signed to the PFL, embarrassing Dana White in the process. Francis has been responding slowly to the things Dana has said over the last few months. He tweeted out a hilarious meme when White stated to the press that the Cameroonian would never be welcomed back in the UFC, and he made a few videos on how the UFC had treated him. Now though, he's going off, and why wouldn't he? Dana tried to make it impossible for the guy to sign anywhere by stating he was the most difficult fighter he ever had to deal with. The UFC's head honcho revealed that despite having 75 dinners with the man, Ngannou was impossible. Well, apparently not. The Predator has told fans the full story. He began blasting Dana by revealing how the negotiations actually went and how the UFC didn't really listen to him. They just kept throwing money in his face to shut him up. And boy, was that embarrassing for Dana. After signing with the PFL, he fired back directly at Dana and let the fans know that he didn't need the UFC. He talked about how he respected White and the UFC and appreciated what they'd done for him, but he felt like they hadn't really been promoting him at all. He also mentioned how with the PFL deal, not only does he have an amazing guarantee, but he's also allowed to box and do what he likes. This is a huge slap in the face for Dana, by the way, because he said Ngannou was unaware of the business world. He talked about how Francis had killed his career, and the former champ proved him wrong by doing what he's done. I know this all sounds pretty bad for Dana, but to be fair, Ngannou kept it respectful. He talked about how, despite everything, he was still cool with the UFC president. Don't think Francis was trying to be nice either. He acknowledged how the business side of things had gone terribly between him and Dana, and he definitely held the big boss of the UFC accountable. He shared a pretty interesting story about how he confronted Dana in person to settle the beef. Apparently, Francis got right to the point and told White that he'd felt like the UFC had abandoned him, and that he'd been treated unfairly. As you can probably expect, Dana dismissed this completely and implied that Ngannou had a lot to be grateful for. I don't know about you, but this whole exchange genuinely just makes the promotion look bad. But it didn't stop there, because Dana had previously implied how Francis should feel bad and regret his poor business choices, and the Predator ended his statement with an extremely satisfying response. All he had to say was, "Why should I feel bad? Things worked out great for me." But that's enough about Dana. He's not the only one to have gone after Ngannou. As I mentioned earlier, the presidents of BKFC and ONE both got their hands on this pie. It's considered what these guys said to be extensions of Dana's words. So, in response to them, the Predator was indirectly taking shots at Dana too. BKFC's David Feldman came out and made it seem like he was in talks with Ngannou, and that the man was just asking for too much. ONE Championship's Chatri went on Chael Sonnen's podcast and spoke about how he had a deal in the works for Francis. A day later, he tweeted that he was removing his offer because the guy was asking for too much. He made Ngannou sound crazy and talked about how he was asking for a seat on the ONE board and asking for special powers. Even I was confused about what Francis was trying to do here. But once he signed with the PFL, he went on Ariel's show and specifically called out Chatri and Feldman. But what exactly did he say in response to them? Well, he went on there and called them two-faced liars. He started by clarifying that Feldman hadn't ever even spoken with him and that he just made that whole thing up. He claimed that the president of the BKFC decided to follow whatever Dana was saying, only to get some clout for his promotion. If that's true, it was a pretty dumb move. It's also ironic considering how he was implying that Francis was dumb. As for Chatri, he was apparently begging Ngannou to join ONE. When the Predator refused and told him that he was already getting everything he wanted at PFL, Chatri went onto social media and made it seem like Ngannou was insane. The PFL deal was pretty much done when Chatri went on to Chael's show, and making it seem like he was the one signing Francis. Honestly, these two guys should probably be more embarrassed than Dana. Not only was Ngannou's decision clearly very brave, but it also seems like it was the correct move. Francis has signed the deal of a lifetime with the PFL. Funnily enough, all the demands that Dana rejected and used to call the Cameroonian impossible. And the same demands that Chatri used to make him look like a moron is everything the PFL has agreed to give him. Not only is Ngannou guaranteed $10 million each for 2 fights, but he also has a seat on the PFL board. Everything Chatri framed as insane, the 36-year-old has now earned. Francis is such a cool dude. He negotiated that whoever he fights in the PFL will also get a $2 million guarantee. Plus, he's going to spearhead the development and expansion of the promotion in Africa. All of this is extremely exciting, and this is one of the greatest deals MMA has ever seen. Just by pulling this off, Ngannou blasted all of his haters, especially Dana, off the face of the earth. So, from the Predator signing the deal of a lifetime, to everyone, including Dana White, calling Francis dumb for leaving the UFC, that was why Francis Ngannou absolutely blasted Dana White after signing with the PFL.